Hello, everyone, and welcome to another professional development parent edition with Neuro Advanced Academics. We are an academic firm that cultivates the innate genius within children by using neuroscience-based practices, and we are so happy to have you join in tonight with us with another professional development. So we are super excited about tonight. We have a wonderful group of experts, and tonight we are talking about the importance of integrating culture into learning, and you are in for a treat tonight. So go ahead, share with a friend, text a friend, tell them to come on and join on in, because you are expecting to go on a journey tonight, a wonderful journey, as we discuss what culture is and why it is so important, especially during this time now. So we're going to start off. NeuroEducator Yancey is going to introduce our wonderful panel for you tonight, and then we're going to jump right into the conversation.
Absolutely. So good evening, everyone. I'm going to start by introducing our panel. First off, we have Miss Shelley Blake. Miss Shelley Blake has been an educator for 16 years in the Philadelphia School District. She's an undergraduate degree in economics from St. Joseph's University, graduate degree in elementary education, owner of Shell Natural Products organic skincare line. She has been married for 30 years. They have one daughter. Her teaching philosophy is learning environments should be created where each child is valued, feels psychologically secure, and has their physical needs met. Thank you for joining us, Educator Blake. Next, we have Mr. Ira Bond, and Ira L. Bond is a master teaching artist, African masquerade professional, and cultural enrichment specialist for 30 years. He has a school principal certification and a master's degree in multicultural education from Eastern University. He has also earned an honorary degree in Malian cultural arts from Antioch University and the National Dance and Drum Ensemble of Italy. He has been teaching male rites of passage in Philadelphia School District for 10 years. Ira was PD specialist with COSEBOC, the Coalition of Schools Educating Boys of Color, during the implementation and development of the Sankofa Passage Program. The founder of Philadelphia Performing Arts, Mr. Ira Bond. Thank you for joining us tonight. Next, we have educator Robin Elisa Calhoun. Ms. Calhoun has the Bachelor of Science degree in elementary education from Albany State University. She's a recipient of 1-year minority fellowship from the Ohio State University in Columbus, by which she earned the Master of Arts degree in early and childhood education and took a study tour in England of infant and junior schools. She was awarded the Educational Specialist degree in Curriculum and Supervision at Albany State University, and ABD, all but dissertation from Grand Canyon University, Doctorate of Educational Leadership. Her professional services have been at the elementary and middle school levels as classroom teacher and assistant principal. She served the Georgia Department of Education as a middle grade literacy instructional support specialist, and currently she is the instructional coach for the elementary Magnet School of Arts in Albany, Georgia. Educator Calhoun was initiated into Delta Sigma Theta sorority in 1975, a lifetime member of the International Association of Ministers' Wives and Ministers' Widows. She is the wife of the Reverend Dr. Reginald Calhoun, a mother and grandmother. Welcome, Dr. Robin Calhoun. Next, we have Educator Brian Harris. Brian Keith Harris II is the Director of Outplacement and Graduate Support at the Bishop John T. Walker School for Boys in Washington, D.C. He is the founder and artistic director of Sons of Freedom Dance Institute, an organization that nurtures character, increases social awareness, and builds a spiritual foundation for boys of color through classical and contemporary styles of dance. He is also the director of Cultivating Young Kings, an organization that provides educational training for teachers, school districts, and community leaders who work directly with boys of color. He was named one of Black Enterprise Magazine's 2019 Be Modern Men distinction and has received educational landscape for boys of color. and has received numerous awards for his work in changing the educational landscape for boys of color. He is a licensed minister, lecturer, and workshop facilitator, and currently working on a doctorate in public management from Wesley Theological Seminary. He has also earned a master's degree in divinity with emphasis in Christian education from the Samuel Dewitt Proctor School of Theology, and has an undergraduate degree in print journalism from Hampton University. Welcome, Brian Harris. Next, we have Educator Mike Jacobs. Educator Mike Jacobs is the assistant principal at Center City PCS in Washington, D.C. Undergrad, Howard University Graduate School, currently at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology, working on a doctorate of education in educational psychology and technology, member of the International Society in Education. Welcome, Educator Mike Jacobs. Next, we have Dr. Woods. Dr. Woods has also been an educator. As a small child, she held classes of her own with her siblings and many family members. At the end of the academic year, she will celebrate 25 years in the profession. She has taught science in every grade from kindergarten to undergraduates. Her teaching experience in the state of Pennsylvania falls into 3 categories: independent schools, where she spent 11 years, charter school, where she is completing her 11th year, and college, where she is completing her 10th year, teaching anatomy and physiology 1 and 2, human biology, and math. Her desire to teach in the public arena stemmed from her wanting to equalize the playing field for students of color in the sciences. She believes that education is the key to all success. She earned her first 2 degrees at Howard University in Washington, D.C., a bachelor in science in the field of zoology, and a master's degree in biology with a focus on molecular and microbiology. Her 3rd and 4th degrees were earned at Arcadia University in Glenside, PA. They included her master's in education with a concentration in secondary biology and her doctorate of education leadership in conjunction with the supervisory principal certificate. Dr. Woods' focus for her dissertation was to create the only mentoring and induction program for Black teachers in the United States. When she is not teaching, Dr. Wood enjoys spending time with her 3 children, cooking, reading, and hiking. She's an avid runner and has completed many Broad Street runs. That's 10 milers, you guys. 4 half marathons and a full marathon. Welcome, Educator Woods. Thank you all so much. We're just going to jump right into these questions. So take it, Educator Jackson.
All right, so thank you so much, Educator Yancey. So again, tonight we're talking about the importance of integrating culture into learning. So the first question I want to ask, when we're talking about this word culture, how do we define culture? What is culture? And what is culture? What does culture even look like?
Well, thank you, neuroeducators, Yancey and Posey. I just want to say to each one of you, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this dynamic panel of experts tonight, and for the innovative, progressive work that you're doing in order to help our parents in this uncharted era of educating their children at home on a more formal basis. I would say that because we are in this particular stage of our lives, our culture and what we do to transmit that culture is very important. And we have greater opportunity to do that because, as we know, everything can't be taught in school. So when we ask what is culture, culture is the very soul of a people. Culture is who we are. Culture is what we do. Culture is how we wear our hair, how we walk, the swag in our step. Culture is what we eat. It's how we worship. Culture is that je ne sais quoi. It's that thing that you can't really put a name on, but you see it and you want to emulate it, but you can't because it's an innate quality. And so therefore, culture is the very soul of a people. It is the essence of who they are.
I agree. It is definitely who we are, who it shapes us as a being, as humans, as who we are. And I think one of the important things, as you mentioned, is just that oral culture. Because we can't get it from school, so we get it from our families, the people that we're around, right? So that oral tradition, that oral history, and even now when parents are home, they should be talking to their kids about where they come from, what it is that they really hold value to, and really really hone into those cultural things that make them who they are.
I definitely agree
Dr. Calhoun,
with.
I really think
I'm sorry.
I really wish that you would put that definition. It's okay. Put that definition in the dictionary. That was awesome. When we talk culture, oftentimes we find that young people, or even not young people, mix up the difference between culture. They mix up race. They mix up ethnicity. Because I actually do what I always do, right? I Googled it. What is culture? What does the dictionary say about culture? And one of the examples they gave was Caribbean people. I'm like, well, I'm a Caribbean person, and my friend is also a Caribbean person. We are nothing alike. And so what does that mean? And so I think one of the difficulties is that we have to figure out how to really express that for the younger generation, so that they're not continuously mixing up those three things, because then it becomes a really convoluted conversation, because we cannot keep it streamlined. So I think you need to write Mr. Webster's dictionary and tell him this needs to be our formal definition that you presented tonight, because I love it. I want to write that down.
I also agree with that wonderful definition by Educator Calhoun. And I would also add the culture, specifically working with our young people, really gets into teaching our young people cultural legacy. And that being helping our young people to understand that they are a part of a rich history, a rich heritage, and a rich legacy of people who have been able to be resilient, who are courageous, who are brave, who had tenacity, and that same level of resiliency and bravery and courage is directly deposited into our young people. And I think oftentimes what ends up happening is that we miss the step of retaining and teaching that cultural legacy, so that our students and our children have a sense of pride. And so when I think of culture, I think about a group of people or a community of people that have all of the wonderful things that Educator Calhoun said, but also are people who have a level of confidence, awareness, and pride. In other words, they're able to wear their cap, and their cap is the thing that they need in order for them to be successful in life. So cultural legacy, having the ability to have confidence, having the ability to have awareness, and also being proud of who you are and from where you've come.
Yeah, I think
Yes, so you heard it here
Educator
first.
Brian said was,
I'm sorry.
the legacy, I think we really need to teach why we do what we do. Why do we have that swag? Where did the culture come from? That I find there's a disconnect a lot of times with young people. Oh, that's just, what grandma did. Well, why did it? Why do we eat the way we do? Why do we worship the way we do? It's a long legacy, like you said, of why we do things. But there, like I said, it's a disconnect that it was just because. But I think that we need, as we teach culture, we teach that legacy, we have to teach why. Why, there's a reason we eat the way we do, because it was what was left over from when we were enslaved sometimes, that it was, and then we put our Caribbean spices in it, we put our African spices in it, and now we have this delicious, what we call soul food. And it's our culture, but it's a reason behind it. So we really need to teach our young people.
Yes, so you heard it here first. The definition of culture. What is culture, and what does that mean to us? It is our legacy. It is our confidence. It is pride. It is the soul of who we are, and it is what we carry on to our young people. So that way that we can continue to thrive and continue to be exactly who we are unapologetically. So we're going to go right into our next question. Surrounding the, I'm sorry. Okay, yes, definitely.
I want to go further it a little bit. And just talk about the differences between high culture. So when we talk about culture, and I definitely agree with Dr. Calhoun in that culture is everything. It's the way we speak, it's the swag, it's the clothes that we wear, it's the way we walk. And there are different types of culture. We are all talking, when we talk about culture, we're talking about civilized high culture. We're talking about the culture of our ancestors, the culture that when we mention the word legacy. So we're talking about common respect, for instance, for our elders, which is something that has always been prominent in the Black communities, even in Africa. When you speak, you know, and this is one of the things I talk about with my young people, you know, is a part of our traditional culture that you speak to elders and you don't just walk in a room and not say hello. Or for instance, that you know, there are things that we do as people of color, you know, and I think that nowadays we have a new culture that has arisen, a culture of individualism, a culture of separatism, a culture of what we even call street culture. And so we have to differentiate between which culture, like we talk about, because young people do have a culture, and I'm not saying that all of our young people participate in what we might consider a negative street culture. But what we try to do at, for instance, at an Imhotep or at another African Center school, or even schools that have kind of like a cultural foundation, they might not have it written in their charter or in their schools, but it's a part of a lot of our philosophies that we teach young people about who they are and whose they are. So with that, they have an understanding of their foundation in terms of how they know that their historical context doesn't begin with enslavement, but that there are hundreds of years of context that happened before that. So that's the culture that we want our young people to believe in, because if they can believe in that, then we believe that it affects their self-esteem. So I just wanted to add that part about there is another culture that we should acknowledge that young people participate, and sometimes it's not positive.
And I'm thinking too, the culture that we really want to lift up as a standard for civilized society, of which we are, is something that came to us by the griots. And in the African community, the griots were the storytellers. They told us our traditions. That was our heritage. That's what we learned by seeing and listening to, of stories told over and over and over again. And I think that until we have opportunity to really know what our culture is and to really make it demonstrative for our young people through our stories. We sometimes find some of our elders don't want to relay their stories because they're too painful for them, but we do want opportunity to record when they speak, to have a recording that we can archive and save it for our children so they will know. I'm Pharaoh's BB. I want Pharaoh to know who my parents were, my grandparents, so that as he's coming along, you know, he won't have to rely solely on what Ancestry.com tells him, but he will have it from the words of his BB, who he is and how he came to be.
I was going to say quickly too that I think oftentimes our young people fall into a culture that the brother was talking about, that oftentimes have some negative connotations because they really don't have any roots in understanding the culture from which they've come. And so when we think about, you know, creating roots, you know, Marcus Garvey said, a people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. And so in a real sense, it is almost imperative that we as educators, as parents, as, you know, people in the community are helping our young people to understand their roots, because it's that understanding of their roots that then shapes their identity. And so once your identity is shaped, you therefore can go out into the world and you in some sort of way will be able to differentiate between the culture that you've come from and the culture that you may not want to fall into. So it's all about helping our young people to have that cultural foundation and helping them to understand that they come from it, as you stated, they come from a people whose history began before 1619, as opposed to after 1619. And we oftentimes teach that a lot. This is what happened from 1619 and on, without showing our young people that their ability to be innovators and creative thinkers and all of those kinds of things came from a group of people that in some sort of way built the pyramids, and so when they understand those roots and they understand that idea that they are a part of something so much greater than what they're currently seeing, then they will be able then to make a decision, an informed decision about what culture they truly need to be a part of and what culture they actually belong to.
So I want to push us to think about, where was the cultural baton dropped, right? What generation, or who was a part of that generation that did not pass the baton? Because what's happening is that we don't live in the same society as we used to anymore, where parents and adults have the opportunity to actually sit with their children, right? We're in a society where people have to work a lot, where they don't get to sit down and sit around the table and eat with their kids anymore, right? So how do we get that baton to be picked up again and to pass? Because right now we have a lot going on in the world, and realistically, we're not just going to sit down. So maybe a recording, right? Maybe someone who has it from before can share it with their family now that we have the time. But the cultural baton was dropped, and we need to figure out how we can pick that back up again and share it with our young people, because without that sense of like culture, they won't get it. And they're seeing a lot of different things from social media culture, from all of these different types of things. And that's what's shaping them, because they don't have an identity. They don't have anything that's really grounding them, because lives has changed within the adults in our society.
Yes, absolutely. And so that's why I feel like it is amazing that we have had so many amazing educators and founders of organizations from not just one place, but from all up and down, the East Coast. So we are putting people such as ourselves who are in positions to have these organizations and put them out and say, this is what's in your community. This is where we are picking up the baton and saying, hey, this is the culture. This is who we are. This is who you are. This is whose you are. It's our time as educators on this platform. It's our time as adults. We know we have the mind to understand that, hey, maybe, things may have skipped a beat, but we're here. We're just here. We're going to keep it moving, keep it going. And I love that each and every one of us are connected to some type of platform to where we can set ourselves up to be a positive impact on each of our individual communities. It's a beautiful thing, and I love it. And that's why we're here. We're here to do just that for each other. We're here to pick that up, and we're here to help start putting those pieces together, or continue to put those pieces together to maybe where there may be some disconnect or lack of knowledge in whatever area. So yes, absolutely. I love this conversation, you guys. You guys are amazing. I just want to say, yes, keep it going. We're going to go right into our next question. So surrounding the horrific incident of 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery, how important is multicultural education? What is multicultural education?
I wanted to jump in on this, because I think what Brother Mike said is really in some sort of way connected to this question. How is it, or where is it, or when was it that baton was dropped in some sort of way, and our young people began to slip into a culture that was not a positive one? I think that one of the bifurcations or separations is really found and perhaps housed in our education system. And I think what has happened over time is that in our education system, we have shifted our focus on what education really is, and specifically what educating Black and Brown children really is and what it should be. And as a result of us shifting that focus, and that focus being shifted to more a focus on standardized testing, more focused on that type of data, as a result of us shifting our focus on there, we have excluded many of our children of color, and they now don't have access to understanding things about their heritage, their culture, or themselves because the education system has shifted. And so when I think in terms of multicultural education, I think in terms of celebrating cultures throughout our world, through our literature, throughout our curriculum, but then also this is really in the vein of or scope of work that I do in our admissions process. And so what oftentimes ends up happening is that there is no one in our schools who are from different cultures that is able to kind of raise a relevant voice to say, hey, I want to learn about this culture because this is a part of my heritage. And so when that happens, what ends up happening is that our school in some sort of way focuses less on the different people that they're teaching. And then, you know, we have the problem of having different children not being represented. And so I think when we think of multicultural education, it has to be manifested in literature. What are our kids reading? How is it what our kids are reading? How is that in some sort of way reflective of who they are and their experiences? And then also in the curriculum. And then lastly, in our admissions process, an admissions process for perhaps those charter schools or perhaps those private and independent institutions that have an opportunity to bring in children from all different backgrounds. So thinking about multicultural education, three things: through literature, through curriculum, and then through admissions.
Peace. I would thank you for that. I would venture to say even that for multicultural, I actually had a degree and master's degree was in multicultural education. I think it's very, very important to have a perspective, a variety of perspectives about life. I think when it comes to our young people, specifically young people of African descent, their foundation, again, still has to be with their identity in terms of knowledge of self. And then out of that, they can learn more about the world. And that's something that we do through rites of passage, we do through cultural infusion in the classrooms. And so those two things right there, for instance, rite of passage, it talks about a transition and is rooted in, of course, we talk about the high culture. But with that, you know, we mentioned to, especially because I work with the boys, we mentioned to them that they don't just wake up a man, but they have to go through some type of training. They have, you know, there is no magic pill, or you can't just have sex and think that you are a man. And when we speak about culture, the current culture that they're exposed to now teaches them that. It teaches them that you know, as soon as they have these certain types of milestones, that they can become independent and they can become, you know, quote unquote men. And so that's one piece. But then the other piece is just kind of showing them and exposing them to images of themselves that are positive. So strong Black male figures, strong, you know, Black female figures. A lot of them are not seeing that. And so when they are exposed to that, and when they see that, and when they get to know people and build those relationships, and the brother Brian talked about the emphasis on standardized testing. It's interesting because you can't get, in my opinion, and we can ask the educators here, but you can't get to a high level of achievement on standardized testing if you don't have a relationship with the children that you're teaching, because that relationship opens the door for them to talk about their weaknesses and then in their strengths, and then you can really start to work with them. But the people, if you don't have a relationship with them, if you're just going in to teach, then what happens is you have a disconnection, and especially true with our young people because they have experienced so much trauma. And so I would just say, you know, like where we drop the ball is just like, you know, that's a part of it. We have to definitely emphasize that in our classrooms.
When I think
And
about,
thinking about what,
is that Dr. Wood?
go ahead, Dr. Calhoun.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was
go ahead.
when, you know, as our brothers were speaking, who dropped the ball? And Mike, and where did it get dismantled? Okay, who lost our race? And so when I think about in sometimes our periods where we were struggling to survive and we were taking care of other people's children, and sometimes ours may have been neglected. And in this stream of survival, we neglected to do the kinds of things that we needed to do in order to perpetuate future generations. When I look at a set of publishers' books who are coming to us for adoption, we always look at what is the diversity, what is represented in the literature series. Do they adequately represent people of color? Are women, girls, females portrayed in a positive light? Are there students there who have disabilities, physical? So we're looking at many different kinds of things. And I think when we talk about multicultural education, we're talking about having an environment where our children can achieve a worldview mindset, because our children have to understand that we are a separate entity, but we exist in a world around us, and we must assimilate into that world at the same time retaining our own heritage. And when we think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the strongest one is our sense of belonging. Our brother made mention of, we got to know who we are, our sense of self-worth. So knowing who we are, and then having that relationship with adults in our lives who can help us get that understanding. Because see, when I came up, old people would tell you, that ain't you. You don't do that. And so we gotten away from that kind of culture with a kind of hands-off attitude about who is belonging to who and who is belonging. And we've since belonging to one another.
That's right.
I was thinking about curriculum as Educator Brian Harris spoke about it. And I was thinking about the fact that, if we go back to the beginning of education in this country, and the separation, right? Because education really was never for us. It was always for one particular group, and they tend to be male. And so the lens through which education was brought to us was through their lens. And so what was happening at the time with the enslaved was, while they were fighting to learn, they were fighting to learn the other version, but they were still tying along the cultural pieces that was happening. So they were still learning the things that were integral to them. As we transition through to the new century, and education was supposed to be happening, yes, we had schools, and those schools were being taught separately. We had schools for white kids, and they were learning all that they were learning. We had school for Black kids, and they had teachers that looked like them, sounded like them, and understood them. And so in addition to teaching the curriculum pieces, they were also teaching them the cultural piece. Don't get upset with me when I say the next thing, because what happened after Board of Ed was desegregation of these schools, right? And then all of a sudden, now we no longer have teachers that look like us, sound like us, and understand us teaching our children. And I will tell you right now, in the United States, 79% of the teachers in urban schools are white. And there is no way for them to understand that transition. So we lost that in the 50s. And so then we started families having, everything else was going on in the country. And so we're fighting for survival, as Educator Calhoun talked about. At that point, education became almost secondary, not necessarily wanting it to become secondary, but wanting it to be equal. Has it ever been equal? Absolutely not. Because we traded what was supposed to be equal schools or desegregation, and lost the cultural piece that happened with it. And so we're no longer doing those things. And so as we move through the century, and we're getting now towards this, where we are right now, where children are not afraid to look at teachers. I know fairly well, I'm from the Caribbean. If a teacher called my home, understood, I was scared to go home, because my parents didn't play. Right. And today, kids, you're like, I'm sorry? And today, kids are like, yeah, call my parents. See what they're going to do. They're going to get you. Exactly. And I'm sitting there going, I wish you would. And so, you know, as Baba Ira talks about the relationships that we have, he will tell you in our school, yes, I'm Dr. Wood, but I'm mom. And I tell them I will love you the way I love my children, which means I'm gonna snatch you. And you know, all of those things, because my students have seen me snatch my daughter because she went to school with me. And they've seen me snatch them. And they've seen me call their parents and say, I'm about to snatch your kid. And so it's all about that relationship, right? Can I take that to a King high school? Absolutely not, because it's not part of their culture that we're actually embedding in our kids. So where did we drop the ball? Unfortunately, we dropped the ball in the 50s and the early 60s when schools started to become desegregated and still never equal. And how can we pick it back up? We pick it back up by all of these programs that Baba Ira is talking about teaching our babies who they are and whose they are. We give them a sense of self back. We give them that feeling that, you know what, I'm not perfect, but I'm gonna keep trying because this person is invested in me as much as the next person needs to be. And until our children learn that they are loved to that point, the connection won't happen again. And so we need to love on them the way we love our own, because they are our own.
Yeah, I want
Wow,
to.
that was, this conversation is incredible.
Yeah, I think that Dr. Wood was amazing. It's us really, everyone on this call, all of our parents, all of our educators, really taking the time to make sure that our children know exactly who they are and from where they have come. You know, that was one of the reasons why I wrote this book, Freedom's Design, 20 Days of Empowering Black Kings, because I wanted young men specifically to know that they were kings and not slaves to the stereotypes and stigmas of society. Because right now we live in a world where our young men particularly really are slaves to the stereotypes and stigmas. And as a result of that, they're not being successful. They're not being able to become the people that they were created to be. And so it's through our, literature, it's through us as educators, helping them to truly see who they are, by teaching them their history, by giving them that sense of cultural legacy, because that is the confidence that they need in order to exist in a world that doesn't look like them, in order to exist in a world where there is not equity. When we think in terms of diversity, inclusion, and equity, we have to first understand who we are before we can go into the world and exist. Many of my young men who are in 5th grade and going to middle school, many of them go to middle school and they don't see anyone who looks like them, right? And so we spend all the time we can to make sure that our young men have a sense of cultural legacy, so that when you are not in a context where you see people that look like you in some sort of way are able to retain that culture while also being successful in a culture that in a real sense doesn't affirm your identity or who you are. And so it takes us as educators to say, hey, I'm going to teach this math class, but I'm also going to spend some time telling you who you are. I'm going to teach this math class, but I'm also going to spend time telling you all of the African-American people and all of the Black and brown people who are mathematicians that came before you. I'm going to teach you this English, but in some sort of way, I'm going to teach you about all of the amazing writers, all of the people who in some sort of shape our literature today. So it's just a matter of us as educators continuing to make sure that our kids understand who they are, because in a lot of school districts, history is not really even taught anymore because we're so focused on math and science, which is obviously important, but we have to make sure that in those moments, in between math and science, we're also teaching, that cultural legacy and that history. That's the only way that our kids will be confident and be able to survive in life.
Wow. So thank you.
And we have
This has been phenomenal so far.
Was going to say, I agree with Brian 100% because I teach, even though I teach in the heart of North Philly, the school is 99.9% African-American. Out of a staff of maybe 30, it's for African-American teachers. And the children just don't see themselves represented. And studies show that if a child has a teacher, an African-American teacher by the grade of the 3rd grade, they have a greater chance of going to college. And it gets, the chance goes up and up, the percentage goes higher as they get more and more African-American teachers, but we just don't have that. And as far as the curriculum, this is my first year teaching 5th grade. The first 3 chapter books that I taught were little white boys. And so I went and I was like, okay, I have a book I want to read. One Crazy Summer. Oh, the question was, is it rigorous? And I'm like, yeah, it's a Newbery Award winner. It's a National Book Club. It's an African-American author, 3 African-American girls in the 1960s going to visit their mother. And they can see themselves, they hear the language. But the question to me was it rigorous? Why do you think it wasn't rigorous? So we had that battle, but you have to show the culture, the children see themselves in literature as positive examples of themselves, of boys, of girls, of families, of all types of families, that they're validated. And they just don't get that validation in a lot of the literature. And I mean, you have that liberty, I guess, more so in a charter school than you do in a public school. But I teach, like Brian said, we're going to talk, I treat them like my mom taught me. And I tell the girls all the time, look, I don't say anything to you that I don't say to my daughter. And I expect you to act like this. You are a young African-American lady, hold your head up. No, you do not have to do this because you saw it on television. And you see that positive example and love. I'm not cutting them down, just love, and then it's bringing literature. So it's a battle. It's a battle when you don't have the backing of the administration, and it's a battle when you don't have the backing of sometimes the community or your colleagues, because your colleagues are saying, what's wrong with reading Maniac McGee or whatever? Yes, it's good literature, but I want to see them represented. So you're definitely right about that.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I think we as educators, I think we forget that we have a code of ethics, and one of those is commitment to the student, right? And that's making sure that we provide every opportunity for them to learn and making sure that they get exactly what they need. And I think we need to stop playing this kind of political game. Yeah, we're gonna infuse, you know, a young lady in there of a different culture, or a young man in there of a different culture, and then call it done, right? Stop playing this political game and really dig into, like, what do we need to do to make this curriculum really rich in all cultures and not just one representation of, like, okay, yeah, we did this, so we're done, right? We need to kind of wrap that up and challenge our curriculum specialists to really dig into some books and some literature that really dig into the African-American, just all different cultures. That's why it needs to be multicultural. But I think, again, we forget that we have a commitment to students and their families to making sure that we provide the best education for them possible.
I totally agree, Mike. I totally agree. I was going to say, not only do we have a commitment to our students to make sure that they are learning from literature and from pieces of content that look like them or that resemble their experiences, but we as educators also have a responsibility to challenge the systems that in some sort of way would continue to oppress not only our children, but would in some sort of way harass our teachers to stop teaching things that where our kids see themselves. And so, like Educator Blake, you know, when you talk about the administration or the other educators who in some sort of way are challenging the literature that you're choosing, we as educators also have to take it to the next step and challenge those systems, you know. And so, yes, it's powerful for us to, you know, keep it on the level of our children, keep it on the level of our families, but it's even more powerful when we are also challenging the systems that continue to oppress our children. And then sometimes it's powerful for us to start our own schools.
So this conversation is absolutely amazing. I am so enjoying all of this information that you all, the panelists, are giving on tonight. So speaking of identity, which was a common thread in everyone's response, in 2010, CNN Anderson Cooper played the role of Dr. Clark, administering the doll test for a national audience. When the Black children were asked, which one is the dumb child, which one is the ugly child, which one is the Black child, a large percentage of the children in the test chose the darkest doll. Do you think this test accurately depicts the mind of our children with the absence of multicultural education?
I think it's more the absence of African-centered groundedness than multicultural education. Again, it starts with knowledge of self as opposed to the knowledge of other people. We already get taught about other folks. The battle is getting taught the truth about who we are and whose we are and where we come from. And so, you know, like Sister Blake is talking, like everyone is speaking, we're committed first to teaching young people the truth. So we're on the front lines, you know, and I'm glad we're starting to shift the conversation to, you know, I mean, we definitely are able to take responsibility for ourselves as people of color and where we drop the ball, but we also have to acknowledge the images that are coming from the media and that have continuously infiltrated the minds of our young people, you know, historically. I mean, we've been taught to hate Africa. This is what Malcolm talks about. Like, you can't hate the fruit of a tree and hate the roots, but we've been hating the roots forever. And I can go to, you know, schools, even in African-centered schools, and many of the schools that I go to, and I talk about Africa, and I ask them, do Africans have cars? Do they have phones? And people will still tell me that no, you know, African people live in huts and they're poor and they have flies on them. And we are not teaching them anything different. You know, we're not showing them that there's a grasp for Africa, that every other people around the world are interested in Africa and its natural resources and exploiting Africa. And as African Americans, we could be the people who are actually creating opportunities to invest and to create businesses with our homeland. And you know, so these are the types of things that we have to do. So I'm very excited and happy to continuously see a movement toward educators that are teaching about, that are basically going to combat with these images. And sometimes you have to go to combat with, like you said, the administration. Sometimes you have to go to combat with the teachers, your grade team leaders, even your parents, you know, because it's just amazing that this still continues to happen.
It amazed me when I was looking at, you know, this particular scenario. The doll test came out of a master's thesis at Howard. And when we looked at that, two African-American psychologists had decided that in this particular test, they were trying to determine how this would impact forced segregation. And of course, this went to the Supreme Court, 1954, with Brown versus the Board of Education. Now, the effort with this is that were Black children subjected to the harm of their minds, their psyche, because of segregation, or was it because of the biases that they had been exposed to when they were in the presence of white people? So it was determined, though, from the Supreme Court that, of course, separate was not equal. And that was the reality of that time. But as we look at that today, how has that transcended? Many times our children don't know who they are. And because they don't know who they are, in my Medea voice, it comes off as, it's not what they call you, but it's what you answer to. And so if I'm seeing the images of people telling me who I am, and I see images portraying me as something other than, I don't know, just that's all I see, then I become whoever that is. And that's what I believe. And so, but today, what really concerns me more so is the perceptions of Black children and how they see themselves in terms of discrimination, in terms of bias in a racialized society. Because, you know, I don't know about you all, but from my early days of integration through my graduate studies, I've been subjected to discrimination and overt racism. I mean, it's just an everyday kind of thing. Even at professional meetings that we attend. I mean, it's just, you know, it is what it is. And so, you know, giving our children that sense of self to know who they are, and that's what's most prevalent about an HBCU. Some children have not had that experience in their K-12 career. So when they get to the college level, if they have a solid and firm foundation on which to base their morals and their understanding of what our heritage is and on whose shoulders we are standing, then they're in a better frame of mind in order to combat the overt racisms and things that are said about them and the feelings and the nuances that they get when they enter a room of a mixed culture. And so I think it's very important for us to understand that stereotypes still exist. But I think what really concerns me more so is that when our children have anti-Black bias themselves against other Black children. And so when we talk about anti-Black bias that we have against our own people, that's something really serious, because that goes against all the culture, the community, the village, everything that is supposed to stand there to exist for us. So for us, by us has become something that we don't really ascribe to. We go to the other side to get the other things that we could get from one another, but we don't support one another in that. Why? Because it goes back to the doll test experience. We think the white man's ice is colder. And we've got to come out of that kind of mindset and understand that we are our brother's keeper and that we are all that we have. And we have to learn how to lean and depend on one another and reconnect those bonds. And however they were irretrievably broken, we got to get them back again in order to survive as a people. And one thing that this period has taught us, we've got to learn to come together. And socioeconomic status doesn't mean a thing, because the death tolls represent all classes and all races of people. And some people think it's only about us, but that's because a narrow view. But we have to understand that when we look at who we are in a worldview, we have to understand that we are a part, but we are an integral part. And the other pieces that join us together, we have to strengthen those chains so that they cannot be broken, because we have a true identity and a foundation on which we stand.
I totally agree, Dr. Calhoun. One of the things that concerns me is the same thing that concerns you, is the way in which our children see themselves. And what I like to call, you said anti-Black, what I like to call it is disassociative dualism, when the oppressed becomes the oppressor. And we in some sort of way have, in our culture, we have our young people who are, you know, against each other because of something like the color of their skin or the way in which their hair is. And so when we have those constructs of colorism, when we have those constructs of disassociative dualism, then we are almost doomed when it comes to us not teaching our children anything about their heritage and culture, which is why it's so imperative that we help our young people to understand that, you know, we are, you know, people of color, many different shades. All shades are beautiful. All skin types are beautiful. All types of hair are beautiful. I don't know if you guys saw, but just recently on social media, there was a young girl who, I believe her mother, her aunt was doing her hair, and she looked over at her hair and she made the comment that she was ugly, right? And she made that comment because of what she sees in the media and what she sees beauty is. And so, you know, oftentimes we have our kids who have these negative depictions of themselves that is predicated and that is perpetuated by what is happening in our media, and oftentimes what's happening in our curriculum, and I'll say again, in our literature. And so it's so important that not only do we help our kids understand who they are, but it's also important that we bring our kids together and understand that they are also together. They also brother and sister. It's funny because I had an experience at our school where we have one young man who's of lighter skin. And that young man for a long time, didn't believe that he was a Black child, right? And so those are the kinds of things that concern me, that if our kids continue to go, in school and throughout life, having those ideas or those concepts of colorism, those negative views of each other, how successful will they become, and will they be able to stand up when the real oppressor comes, to say things about them that's disaffirming. So it's important that we've said it all evening. It's important that we really spend the time to make sure that in all of our pockets and all of our organizations and all of the programs that we have, that we are focusing on making sure that our kids have a healthy dose of self-worth, that their identity is shaped by things that are truth and not by things that are myths, or not by things that have been placed in society to continue to cause them to have this self-loathing, but to really make sure that we are teaching them the positive things of our culture in order for them to have a healthy self-identity. So when they go out into the world, they're able to function and really continue becoming the people that they are created to be.
Can I add one thing too? I'm sorry. That Mama, go ahead.
So, I'm listening to this, right? And I'm thinking about my background, and I'm thinking about my 3 children. And I'm of East Indian heritage, and my children go from really light to, my son had, blue-eyed and all of that, to I think my daughter, my middle child, is about my complexion, and I'm the darkest one. And I think about that doll test and what it actually says, and where we go from there. And I'm back to what Educator Mike said, and in terms of dropping that baton, right? Because if you think about that test, as much as we do in school, and we do a lot in school, and wanting to do even more to help support our babies move forward and understand who they are and whose they are, they learned a lot before they got to us. And so we still have to address, that baton that fell and continues to be laid on the floor, because our babies are coming to us with that trauma, and it's coming from our homes. Unfortunately, it's coming from our homes, our communities, it's coming from us. And, while one of the things that we do, I think that we try to do well at Imhotep, is not just educate the child, but try to educate the family. Because we want to make sure that we break that cycle. Because I can tell you you're beautiful. I tell my students all the time, when we're on Google Meet in the morning, I'm like, I need to see your face. You're getting to see my face. I want to see your face. They're like, Mom, but I still got my hair is met. I'm like, I don't care. You're beautiful to me. And, you have to understand that is the skin you're in. If you don't understand your skin, if you don't love your skin, how do you expect someone else to love that skin? And so then I see things on Facebook where a little baby, she couldn't have been more than 9 months, and the parent put a wig on her and then took the wig off, and the baby cried because she wanted the wig. And I'm sitting there going, what are we doing? What are we doing with them at home before they make it into anybody's school, for them to be told that that's the better doll, for them to be told that I'm not good enough? When are we going to be responsible, right? Because I really, it hurts. It hurts to think about that moving forward. My husband and I, we're both biracial children. And when we got together, we said really clearly, we were going to make sure our kids understood who they are and whose they are. And then we have these 3 beautiful children. And thinking about what you're saying about my son, and the day I had to say to my son, Boo, you're brown, right? And he was like, what? He's like, Mom, all my friends are white. I'm like, your friends might be white, but you're not. And he's like, are you sure? I'm like, look at your mama. Let's be real clear about who your mama is. And I said to him recently, what's going to happen when I show up to school? with my heels on and my hair in a bun and introduce myself as Dr. Wood, his mother. What are you going to do then? Because you have to understand who you are. You have to understand that it comes in all these wonderful shades, and you have to understand that you are loved and perfect the way you are. And so I think while we want to lay a lot of this on teachers, and we do lay a lot on teachers, we are parents, we are nurses, we are psychologists at school, we are actual teachers at school too. We are the cafeteria lady. We feed children, clothe children, banish children, kiss boo-boos, all of those things. When do we say, what is the parents responsible for? And we've got to come back to that. This thing of educating children did not start in our building. It started at home. And we have to take it there because that's the foundation they need before they get to us. We can't lift up something that's still on the floor. You've got to start lifting and helping them find their feet so that they know they can stand up. So even when somebody knocked them down, they know where their feet are and they know how to get back up on their feet. We can support that, but we can't create that. That can't be our responsibility.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you, Mom. I'm
absolutely.
glad you
I
went first,
love
Mama.
that.
Can
I'm
I
sorry, go
can I
ahead.
get on that? Yeah, I'm glad you went first because I'm like what's really been my kind of in my spirit, especially for the last 4 years, and I've been doing rite of passages for the last 10 years. Before I was at Imhotep, I was with Kozbach, and we had a opportunity to work with several schools in the Philadelphia school district, working with just boys. And so it's about identity, but the next layer is, and I have to always bring this up, is the streets, especially with our boys. So when we talk about the streets, it affects them. And it's what it is it's a cycle of trauma, because it's an idea about survival. And I'm not sure, like I can speak definitely about Philadelphia and the mentality of some of our young boys and what they had to do in terms of thinking about how do they protect themselves because they are vulnerable, but they put on a facade. And so when we talk about like identity in terms of color and talk about hair, and we talk about all of these other things, we also have to talk about what do they really see themselves? Where do they see themselves in 10 years, 20 years, when they're my age? Or do they even see themselves at all? And the sad reality for a lot of our boys, and one of the reasons why they don't try in school is because they don't see themselves. It's not even important that some of them, they might not even think that they're going to make it out of school, is what I'm saying. Or they're not even going to think that they would one day be 45 or 35, because that's not a reality to them. Because when they look around themselves in the streets and things, they see something that's totally different. They don't see black men, elderly black men or middle-aged black men that are married. And it's not all the young brothers, but it's a significant amount. And I think it really affects their psychology. And so one of the things that we do in our Rites is, in Philadelphia, we have a program at Temple University called Cradle to the Grave. Philadelphia, in North Philly, they have one of the highest, gunshot wound victims for Black men. And we go to the trauma department and we actually see what happens. And we take a group of boys down to Temple University, and they get the chance to see the realities of gun violence, because for them, a lot of them, I mean, they think it's like on TV. You take some tweezers and you pull it out the bullet, and it's like that. And that's not the reality. So a part of our job is not only teaching them about who they are and whose they are, but I would love to hear the educators even talk more about how do we combat this narrative, especially for Black boys, that they can live a long life, that they can, be successful, that they can, buy a house, buy a car, and not have to look for fast money. you know, that there are other opportunities for them to be successful besides what they're seeing in terms of the music and in the media.
I think that one of the things, let me go back really quickly, Dr. Wood, what you said was so powerful. And while you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that we not only are suffering, our kids are not only suffering from trauma, but we have generational trauma. And it's oftentimes that generational trauma that give our kids a negative sense of self as well, right? And so, you know, our kids can't see themselves in the most positive light because their parents don't see themselves in a positive light because of the trauma that their parents have experienced. And so to Brother Ira, as we talk about how it is that we can help our young men specifically to feel as if they can actually, you know, live to be 45 or feel like there's life to live, one of the things we have to do is address the trauma that they're experiencing. Because it's hard for a young man to see himself at 45 when at 5 he's trying to figure out if he's going to eat or if he's going to be shot on his way home from school or to school. And so we really have to spend time figuring out where are the resources in our schools and in our communities that will help to address the trauma that our children and our families are experiencing, because that trauma is impeding academic progress. That trauma is impeding emotional stability. That trauma is impeding their mental state. And so one of the things that we do with Sons of Freedom Dance Institute is that we really are in the practice of mindfulness for boys of color. And we have used movement not just to be, you know, a really flashy dance company, but we've used movement in a way to help our young men to heal from the trauma that they are experiencing. And one of the ways that movement helps to heal is because we know the trauma does not just lodge itself in our brains, but trauma is first actualized in our bodies. And as a result of us storing a whole amount of stress and trauma year after year, moment after moment, trauma after trauma, then that turns into some emotional issues, that turns into physical issues. And so one of the ways to just release some of that trauma is simply through movement, right? The mindfulness piece is so powerful because what that says, to what Dr. Wood said, I cannot oftentimes change your home setting. But what I can do is provide you the tools that you need so that when chaos is going on in your community or chaos is going on in your home, you now have some coping mechanisms. Mindfulness is a coping mechanism that our young people can engage in that will help them in some sort of way to cope with or to handle what they cannot control that's happening outside of them. And so when we talk about what are the things that we can do to help our young men, we can challenge the systems, school systems, and communities to provide more resources to make sure that we are helping our children to deal with the trauma that is resident in our communities and within our children. So whether that looks like having more grief counselors, whether that looks like having free community, clinics where young people can go and get some counseling, but we can't just say, hey, we as educators, or like Dr. Wood said, we're going to do all the work, right? It starts at home, but it also starts with those people who have the monetary resources. It starts with the people who have the ability to create more resources so that our kids can get healed. Because once our kids are healed from the trauma, right, then they can begin to adopt that healthy dose of self that we're trying to get them to adopt. But right now they can't hear us, right? Because they're thinking about, when I go home, what's going to happen, and they're seeing their mother, their father, their family members also grappling with their self-identity. And so they too have adopted that. And that's why I say it's generational trauma that we are dealing with. And so those are just some of the ways that we can help our young men to get to that place. Healing is kind of where the foundation is.
And we need to break down the mindset in the families that, oh, I don't need help, right? Or, oh, I don't need anything, right? Because we can get all the resources and we can have all these different things, but if they're not receptive to it, it's not going to change, right? So we need to break down the mindset of, I don't need any help, or I don't care. I'm just going to continue to live the way that I am going to live, and that's it. So we need to address that mindset first and kind of break down that, because we can have all these other resources and all these different things to support and help people in these communities. But again, they don't see that they have an issue. They don't see that there's a generational curse or a generational issue. So they're not going to seek any help. But until something, maybe tragic happens to them, then, be like, okay, you know what? I need a counselor, I need something. But until then, they don't see what is actually happening in front of them. We need to talk to the families about breaking down this mentality that they have, that they don't need mental health services. I can go to church and I can pray about it, and you really need to talk to somebody, right? So we need to talk about that before we get to the different resources, because we can have all the resources again, but if they're not receptive to it, it's not going to change.
And I think that's why it's so important to first, before resources, we have to build relationships with our families, right? This all hinges on the relationships that we have with our children and the relationships that we have with our families. And so I am in no way saying, let's just throw resources at our parents and let them just pick the resources. What I'm saying is that when we engage in our school systems, we should be already engaging with the mindset that we are here to invest in not just this child, but this family. And so one of the ways that I invest in this family is I am walking with this family and journeying with this family with whatever they are struggling with, whatever they are going through. And it's in that level of developing that relationship with that family that I begin to have access to help them to see things differently, that I begin to have access to help them to break down some curses and some things that they may have never seen before, right? And so this all hinges on relationships. It all hinges on our ability as educators, as community activists, as program leaders and directors. It all hinges on our relationships. And that is really the core and the focus of, it should be the core and focus of our work. You cannot teach identity. You cannot offer resources unless in some sort of way you have a relationship to do that. Because first our kids have to even know that you care about them, right? And that starts with, like Dr. Wood saying, by telling them how beautiful they are. That starts by making sure that you remember who your kids' parents are and how their weekends were and what they're going through. And I remember your grandmother said, those are the things that help us to provide the resources. And those are the things that help our parents to say, hey, Mr. Harris, Dr. Wood, Dr. Calhoun, they care about me. And if they're telling me that I need to look at this, I may not want to do this, but I'm going to begin the process, right? I'm going to begin that process. So it hinges on relationships.
Right, because that goes back to educators of color being in the class with children of color, to build those relationships that I'll be honest with you, I just don't see other teachers building. That these are our kids, they're our legacy. They're our kids that we have a bond with them that they just don't have. And getting back to the trauma, some of the kids, they have PTSD. I teach in North Philly where during the school day you hear shooting, and you cannot tell me that the kids are not affected by that. I just going back to what Ira said about seeing themselves in 10 years, 20 years. I remember my first year at the school I teach, it was the 8th grade graduation. They had a limousine, everybody was dressed to the nines. And I'm like, why? And they were like, this is it. They're not going to high school. This is their graduation and they are going all out for it. So we have to start when they're young with the little babies that Mike teaches of, you have a future. You can do this. You see, and I tell my kids all the time, I was you. I'm a little girl, Black girl from West Philly. I went to Philadelphia Public Schools, grew up in West Philly on 52nd Street, and look at me, you're no different. But that's my narrative that I can pass on to them and their parents, and I have that connection because I always tell the little girls, you know what, you look just like I did when I was your age. Mm-hmm. And they just brighten up. But we need to have a representation of African-American teachers teaching our African-American kids and building those relationships, going into those neighborhoods, going into those homes. I walk in the projects, I walk up there, knock on the door, and I'm like, hey, how you doing? I haven't seen so-and-so, what's up? And I get some teachers like, I ain't going over there, but I have no fear. I'm West Philadelphia, and I don't have any fear in Philadelphia, but we need, if we're going to build those relationships, I think we should build those relationships, and we should make it a priority to build those relationships. They are us, we are them. There is no disconnect, there's no them, if we don't grab them now, where are we going to be in 10, 20, 30 years?
And you're not the haves and have nots. So it's very important as an educator, building a relationship with children and with parents is to pull off our own mask. And when you pull off your own mask, you give your families opportunity to see you and let them know that, as a child, we struggled. But as a family, it was a goal of ours in order to help our family by getting an education and by doing some right things. And so as I always said as an educator, before 7:30 and after 2:30, I really can't impact much beyond that set time frame of the school day. But the time that I do have between 7:30 and 2:30, I'm going to control that. And so in the social emotional learning aspect, because the whole child has to be present in order to receive anything that I have to provide. And they won't want anything from me if they don't know that I care. And so my caring is knowing, how are you feeling today? To talk about things that they want to talk about and to address them by their surname. I will call them Miss Posey, Miss Jackson, Miss Yancey, Mr. Jacobs, Brother Harris. And I will talk to them because the respect that I require is the same kind of respect that I have to in turn give to my children. And so for them to see me in that kind of light as the adult, then that is going to be an important part of relationship building. It's a two-way communication, not just my talking to them, but to hear what they have to say as well. I remember as a young girl, the greatest hour of my life was watching Julia, the character portrayed by Diane Carroll. And it gave me a sense of, wow, there's a Black person on TV. And this was really, really important. This was during the black and white TV days. But having the images of someone who was present and in a position of power, and to be someone who made their own choices and decisions and who was going somewhere meant something to me. And oftentimes if we saw, an African-American on TV, everybody would call everybody in the neighborhood, say, turn to the TV. We got somebody going. So the images that are placed in front of us, in front of our children, help us to give them the kind of hope. Because I think when you were talking about, our children think that, 8th grade prom, that's the end of life as it is. I think sometimes when they do hear gunshots and they know about stories, and then their own brothers, their own aunts were gunned down over the weekend, and then they come in Monday, and it's like, well, what do you say? You got to have that empathy to put the arm around and take them aside, because they're not ready to hear anything about your algebra and calculus and physics. They're hurting inside. And if you the innermost part of their being, then you can't connect. And so we have to have that kind of one-on-one and person-to-person contact with our children. And I think that's what I most miss going through this period where we are now, is because we even have opportunity to perhaps connect on Google Hangouts or Zoom or Skype, but it's not quite the same. But if they can see your face, hear your voice, when I hear their voice, it just lightens my day. This is the time when I miss not really having my own homeroom, but at the same time, I have the liberty and the flexibility of calling anyone that I want, say, Mama, what y'all doing over there? And then to have the kinds of conversation to kind of draw them in. Okay, you need any help? Because I know this technological thing is, really catching some people. So we want to build those kinds of bridges where they trust us, to come into their space. Because if I'm standoffish and snobbish and snubbish, then they don't get the idea that I really care and that I'm going to really benefit them and be of the benefit to them. So it's what I put into our day-to-day conversations at the very outset, and so that families can then in turn at least be able to listen, or at least say, I can't provide everything that, I should, but I'm giving you liberty, all right, to pour into the life of my child. And I think that's what the education mission has to be. We put the books in front of them that have some substance, that have some relevance, and that we provide them with, online information that they can access and have some kind of connection to who they are. Because everything that they need, they may not see it in their environment, but we have to provide those images and be that reflection of what a positive image is going to look like and what they too can become.
I totally agree, Dr. Calhoun. I was going to say that, we sometimes think that just the educator has the responsibility to make those connections and build those relationships, but it's every single person in our school. So sometimes what happens is that some people on our administrative teams, our principals, our vice principals of color, our, chief operating officers of color, they oftentimes, may exclude themselves from building that relationship with our students or students that look like them. And so one of the things at the Bishop Walker School that we are very intentional about is making sure that no matter what position you have in our school, it is your responsibility to build a relationship with our young men, because we don't know another time where our young men will be able to see this many men of color in one place at one time. So it's not just important for the educator in the classroom to build those relationships, but it's important for every single person in that building who children connect with to build those relationships. So whether that means that your vice principal or that your principal is creating a book club for a group of people, or whether that means that, your administrators begin to take, a group of young people and every morning they, have a conversation or they do some kind of relationship building exercise. If they do this on a continuous basis, it's important that every person in that building in some sort of way is committed and invested in building the relationships. And sometimes, I get taken off guard when I walk into a school and I see that, some of the kids don't have any relationship with the principal. It's just of color, right? Like, it just kind of baffles me. And oftentimes you'll see that in some school settings. And it's important that the principal, the vice principal, all those leaders are in that school, making sure they have those connections. And it may seem like, well, that just goes without saying, but there are multiple schools in the area in which I live in, where you see principals who do not have, that relationship with our young people, and who believe that relationship only occurs within the context of the classroom and not, throughout the entire school.
Yes, that is amazing. So the trend throughout this question has been mindset, mindfulness, reconnecting the vines and making connections with our students in order to reach them, not only just with our students, with our children at home, using this opportunity to make those connections. And then as educators, making connections with the families. So that way we're building the trust of the students, and they understand and they know that we're being real with them, that it's genuine. And so that way they're receptive to the information that we give them on the academic level. That's how we help them to value what we're giving them, is because they understand that what we're doing for them, what we're giving them, what we're presenting them, it's genuine and it's not just another check mark. I know some of you, one of you had mentioned that before, checking off boxes, and they don't want to see that. They see right through that. So we want to ensure that we're being genuine and building those relationships with our children and focusing on the mindsets, the perspectives of, and understanding that the perspectives can vary from one family to the next, and identifying that, relating to that, personalizing with that as much as we can, because just like Dr. Calhoun said, we have a short window, but when we get in that space that we're focused on them and let them know that we're there for them, we reach out to them just in that very way. So I want to jump with one of our viewers had a question and said, how do we attract and maintain a quality level of melanated teachers to do this? So I want to, when I was thinking of something before they posed that question, and I want to set your minds in a place, because this is very relatable to me and the community that I live in, a community of 36% African Americans, where the teachers are there. We have very little, if any, representation in the school system. So I really want to, I know a lot of you work in, predominantly African American school systems or schools or what have you, and you're working with our boys, and it's amazing, and I love it. I want you to think of those of us that we don't have those resources available to us, maybe one or two programs here or there, but what is it that we can do? How can we attract these educators that are like you all, maybe that are coming from communities like this, but they're going somewhere else for whatever their reasoning. So how can we attract them, and how can we attract our people in our community to create these programs?
Sometimes it's an issue of college graduates wanting to go where the money is. Some smaller districts, particularly rural areas, may not have the tax base in order to supplement what is the state salary. So that becomes an impact. So sometimes you can't widen your tax base unless you get more industries or something in that area that contribute to that, so that teacher salaries can be done. But oftentimes we just have areas where, viable candidates just are not coming into education. And for the life of me, I can't understand why. I mean, this is National Teacher Appreciation Week. Don't you see how wonderful we all are? Everybody had that great teacher who inspired them. Mine was a second grade teacher in Waycross, Georgia, because she was flawless in her appearance. She was the kind, though, who would let you wear her designer glasses. We're 7, 8 years old, but she would take them off and let us wear them. She was a touchable kind of person. She was very sensitive. She and her husband were the power couple of the community. They did not birth children, but every Black child in Waycross, Georgia became associated with them, looked up to them. They would hire the teenagers to do jobs around their house. They were the kind who would, help other children go to college, to expose them to many kinds of things that, were important. They flew students with them overseas, and back during the 60s, 70s, that was unheard of, but they were that kind of person. So I would just, ask communities, and if you are in a community where you do not have a representation of African American educators, then contacting some of your HBCUs in your general regions or areas, and asking of them in the teacher education programs, to send us candidates. And if they come and do 2-3 years, then that will be an attribute that you can put into your community base that will help at least our children see possibilities. And I think for a lot of the time, it's just about what we expose our children to, giving them possibilities. So contacting your HBCUs, first of all, and then looking at children that you're grooming in your community, in your churches, in your neighborhoods, letting them understand that the teaching profession is a very noble profession. It is one in which every other profession rests on, because the physicists of today had a teacher. And so it is in every aspect incumbent upon us In order to strengthen our village is to invite and sometimes nurture the kinds of people that we need to help us grow into the kinds of individuals, families, communities that we need to have. And then when we have persons who are not viable in our communities, then we need to say something. Attending school board meetings is a right. And if they have it and you don't know about it, that's a problem. Then there's, everybody has a boss. So we have to understand that we as citizens, we're not 3/5 of humans anymore. We're full-fledged citizens, but we must exercise our rights as individuals. That means voting, that means showing up. So if we need individuals in our community to help educate our children, we have a hand in that. And that's what the school board, if they say they can't find any, help them. Give them names of individuals. People who even in other states, if someone is willing to make a change, some people just want mission work, and they will come into communities simply to empower your community. So there are many, many issues on which we can actually do better about making our schools the kinds of places that are of benefit to our children. And one thing I know, when my children came through elementary school, one year we got a teacher that Ms. Robin just couldn't set horses with, because she was teaching my young child and she was not putting forth what I thought needed to be in his experience in first grade. So I let it be known to the principal, and I also let the teacher know that I would leave my classroom and come to your classroom because my child is in your classroom. And nothing is more important to me than being this child's mother. So you may look up and see me at any point in time, because that's how we do it. I also informed the principal that every spring that I will send you a letter sealed with the name of the teacher for his next year. The principal informed me, well, the computer, generates a roster. I said, the computer cannot assign a child to my teacher. I will assign the teacher for my child because I know the experience that I need for my child to have. And so as a parent, you have to take that liberty and that right to assert yourself, to provide for your community, your children and the children within your community, because here again, we're a village, and what affects one of us affects all of us.
So I am smiling really hard because that's my whole dissertation, right? And Shirley knows it because she was part of my study. And oh my God, that's awesome. Just awesome. I think, I agree with every single thing that Dr. Calhoun said. I think one of the things we also need to do is to challenge some of these education programs, because while they're trying to incorporate more students of color and trying to get more students of color into their program, they're not changing the programming. And so they're still teaching from that same lens of how to educate someone white to go into our schools. And so we have to actually challenge them to make some of these changes. When we talk about text, as Educator Brian was talking about, it's not just in the K through 12, it has to also be on that college level, because we have teachers coming in that don't seem to understand how to interact with our children. And so one of the things that I found really interesting was that, teachers coming in into our schools, a whole lot of them don't even live in the neighborhoods. They don't live in the community, so they're not part of the community. So they're not as invested in the community because they're outside of that community. So we have to go back to that component where you need to be living where you're teaching. The second thing that we need to be thinking about is that teacher that's inappropriate, whether they look like me or don't look like me. If you are not invested in that child's education in the same way and in the same format, you need to step real fast, because I don't want you in front of my child. You're going to put something that's permanent in my child's head, and I need to know that it's going to be in alignment with what I'm doing. Now, I might be wrong, because you might have 27 other little babies in your class that you need to take care of, and I'm only thinking about the one that's looking like me. But understand that when I think about my child, I'm thinking about not just the one I birthed, but I'm thinking about all of them in the same format. And so it becomes our responsibilities as parents to step in and say, no, that's not the way that's going to go. When we finally get these teachers, and I have to tell you, one of the things I've done for my school, one summer, I was so upset with who was coming in to teach our students. I was driving up and down the East Coast because I was hitting all those HBCUs and all of the departments. And I'm like, listen, I need you to reach out to this other department, because I went to Howard and everybody at Howard knows somebody somewhere along the coast. And we can reach out. We need teachers, and we need teachers to come to Philadelphia, and we need to be able to incentivize getting teachers in Philadelphia. And you're right, even if it's for 1, 2, or 3 years, it's an experience that they get, and it's an experience our children get. And together we can grow a teacher. Once that teacher comes to us, it is our responsibility to help that teacher grow in that way. And so this year, 2 years ago, the induction program that I created, yes, we had an induction program in the school, but the induction program, minimally talked about the Black teacher and the Black child and that relationship. And so it was finding things that was relevant to them and helping them grow in their field of study and their learning and their teaching and their skill. Because you might come in with all the want and will you want, but if you don't have the skill, we still have to figure out how to make you appropriate to stand in front of somebody's child. And so we need to consider not only when they come into the building, but before they come into the building. Because everything that's happening on the education side in undergrad and graduate school is not for us. It is for those others that are coming into that space because they represent 79% of it. And so it's not, we can't do anything about that. But what we can do is say that when you do come to us, these are the other things I need you to do. And we need to not be upset about that. Because this is not just a job that you can turn off at 2:30, unfortunately. We still take them home with us. We still have to make those phone calls. We still have to sometimes show up on a weekend and knock on a door in North Philly. We still have to do all of those things. We still have to drive around in this age of learning online and drop off materials for a child to study with, or materials for a child, or lunch for a child so that they can actually learn appropriately. All of those things are still us. And so it becomes really important that not only are we growing our students, we are growing these teachers, because if our students see that we're invested in their teachers, they too will then become invested in their teachers and then themselves. And all of these things will trickle with each other. And we can't do that if we're sitting in offices as principals, AP, CEOs, or what have you. We can't do that and think that we're going to build these relationships with children, because they're going to know exactly who you are, and they're going to call you exactly what you are, and they're going to walk away from you and not look back. If we really want to do all of this, then we have to step out of our own skin. Still understand that skin, but step out of it and step into our children's skin and educate ourselves, our teachers, and our students all at the same time.
And we need to bring the parents into the conversation who have odds with the teachers at the school. And because the kids hear what their parents are saying at home, I'm gonna go up to that school and I'm gonna let the teacher have it, right? So then there's a breakdown of what's happening at home and at school. So the teacher has lost all authority. And as we know, a lot of teachers have lost just the authority within the profession. So that's why we struggle a lot with building that trust and building that relationship with the family, because they don't trust us anymore. And because they have all these issues with us and they want to come and cuss us out, they want to tell us how we feel, how they feel, so we have to address them and say, you have an odd with me, or you have something to talk to me about, please be respectful enough and be professional and come up to the school building. Let's have a meeting about it, because you want to cuss and go back and forth with me is not going to help the situation. So the parents also need to come and understand, like, we have a job and we have your child's interest in mind, and there's a level of respect respect that you need to have for me as an adult so that we can have this conversation and be respectful about it. Because it happens, you know, parents come up to the school and they're very disrespectful to us and the kids see it. So they're like, if my mom is not respectful to you, who am I to be respectful to you as well? If you're telling me that I have to do this, I'm not listening to you because my mom don't care. So we need to address the parents in that respect, you know, come to the school and be respectful.
Okay, so I hope that everyone, all of our viewers, thank you for tuning in. I hope you all are taking notes. I hope you all are sharing this because this is essential information that I think the community can benefit from. So this is our last question that we're going to ask all of the panelists to respond. So it says, does self-affirmation intervention lead to academic success for Black students? So I'm going to ask that question again. So the last question tonight that I would like for all of the panelists to address is, does self-affirmation intervention lead to academic success for Black students?
Yes. I think that when we have opportunity to set the tone at the beginning of the day, and we have a mission statement that we recite each morning at our school. And it says, you know, about who I am and what my responsibility is on the campus. And when I leave this campus, what I'm going to do because of who I represent. And oftentimes, if a child has done something that is out of line with our mission statement, then we bring that at point as to what do you recall that speaks to this particular situation. So you put the child in the position of being the problem solver. You put the child in the position of reflecting on what was the behavior and then what was the expectation. And then again, what was my role in that position and what could I have done alternatively in order to resolve whatever conflict that was happening. All of that is a part of the mission statement that we recite. So at the beginning of the day, it sets the tone for who we are and what is our purpose, and our focus is set for the day. And if there's any kind of contradiction, we bring it back to, okay, but what did you say? Because your word has power. You know, in the beginning was the word. And so whatever I say, then that is the part that I'm being held accountable to.
I'm going to say yes as well. Dr. Calhoun, our school, we do something similar. Every morning we begin with our school prayer. We are a Christian school, but we also recite our mission. All of our young men from kindergarten to 5th grade are reciting the mission. But two other things that we do that I think are so powerful as it relates to affirmation is that I lead all of our students through a mindfulness exercise. And in that mindfulness exercise, they set their intention for the day. And so they have an opportunity to decide how they want their day to go. So do you want your day to go peaceful? Do you want your day to go productive? And they set that intention. When they set that intention, after we've gone through our mindfulness exercise, we write their name on the board and we write what their one word was that they're going to focus on for the entire day. And so if they are in a moment during lunch where they're not being peaceful, we have an opportunity to bring them back to that place where we say, your intention for this day was to be peaceful. The other thing that I have a wonderful opportunity of doing is taking some of the affirmations that are in my book and being able to share those affirmations. One of the biggest things with young men of color is the fear of failure. And oftentimes when they find themselves stuck right in the middle of failure, they often shut down or give up. And so I read this quick affirmation to them, and it's called an affirmation for difficult days. And it just says, today I will try my best, despite how I am feeling inside. Today, I will call on my ancestors to lead, direct, and guide. Today, I will be kind to myself no matter what is going on. Today, I will love me. I will dance and maybe play my favorite song. Today will pass and a new day will begin. I am grateful for life and the ability to start again. And so that affirmation is something that we have them to say to themselves when they find themselves in a difficult moment. And that absolutely helps them to become academically, emotionally, and spiritually successful for that day or for that time in which we're working with them.
I know at Imhotep, we start the day with an affirmation. We go through libation, for which we give thanks for our ancestors and everything else. And we end that with an affirmation statement. And then every single class has a different affirmation statement once they go to class. And so, they get the big one with everyone, and then they go upstairs and they have another one. For me, I think it's really important that I hug my children. They're 12th graders, and I hug them coming into my room. And you would not believe how that shifts them, because they know that I'm going to give of myself. I'm letting you touch my personal body, so much so that I'm going to focus you. And they'll tell you in a minute, if they walk past me and didn't get a hug, they'd be like, whoa, 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 where's my hug? And, we can't start class until that happens. And I think one of the reasons I do that for them is that I truly believe in the power of touch. And, skin to skin, we do that with babies from get-go, right? And babies know how much they're loved when they're able to be skin to skin with someone. And I think for a lot of our babies, understanding that someone is that invested and that love them that deeply, that they're willing to hug them every single day, even though some of the things that they've done is crazy, and it gives them back that self. And I think it's wonderful for them to be able to have that self-affirmation, because until they understand that they are loved and they can learn and they will, then none of those other things will line up. There's no amount of Pythagorean theorem. There's no amount of, distance is equal to force times all of those things. None of that matters until they understand that they're of themselves and they're of us. And so, and a lot of times I still hug them on the way out. I'm like, we're going to do better tomorrow. They're like, yep, absolutely. And so, they understand that they're not being thrown away just because of a mistake or a misstep or a miss anything. They're actually in a place that loves them. And I will tell you, today I spent 7 hours driving around the city of Philadelphia. I drove over 85 miles today to drop off placards for the seniors. I had 25 on my list, and I dropped them off, and they were like, oh my gosh, you don't know how much we want to be back in the building. I'm like, wait a minute, y'all told us y'all were graduated and gone. What you mean? They're like, we miss you all. We don't get the same thing outside of the building that we do in the building. And that's because one of the things we've taught them is who they are and whose they are. And for that, they're able to find a positive, and they can learn, and they will learn, especially when they know they're loved and fed.
We start every day with an affirmation, a whole class affirmation. And then as my fifth grader in my self-contained room, we give affirmations. And I tell them all the time, you need to know you can do this. And I believe you can do this. We may have to step back and take some scaffolding or some little baby steps, but you can do this. And a lot of times, especially where I am, that's sometimes the only positive word they have that day. And if I don't give it, they don't have it. And I think that's an awesome responsibility that I go in there. I'm a hugger too. I hug, I tell them I love them. It's like, I love my class. Mind you, I had the social emotional class and with like STS workers and one-on-ones, but I always tell them, I love you. I love to have a full class, perfect attendance. And people would say, you love your class? I'm like, yes, I do. These are my babies, so, and they would hear me say that out and open to the principal, to the AP. And I would always tell them, you are worth more. You can do more. You can go higher. And sometimes they were like, no, I can't. I'm like, yes, you can, because guess what? We're going to go together. So they knew that they weren't just out there flailing and not having any kind of direction. But because sometimes I've dealt with, parents that were incarcerated or children that were living in, other places. But I was that constant. And I mean, this is kind of geeky, but I only missed one day this year. But I was that constant, and that weighed on me that I needed to be there for them, especially if I knew something was happening with a certain child. I need to be there with them. I need to tell them that I am here. You can count on me, and we can do this together. That even though we didn't have Brian didn't have an actual individual or classroom affirmation, they had it with me and our whole class. But I think that was very important, that they had that constant and they had someone there to believe in them.
Yeah, I think at my school, we start the day with virtues, and every week we have different virtues, and along with those virtues, they have affirmations, and we get together as an entire school and we say those affirmations, so everyone in the room sees everyone saying and saying the same thing. When we disperse and we go to our different classes, I think for the last 2 years, I had my teachers do class charters. So each child was invested. They got on the floor. They had markers like, what do you want our class charter to be? What do you want this to say? What are you going to live by? And if you're going to live by it, you have to honor it and be true to it. And if you break it, then we're going to come back. And then, we're going to reaffirm it. So every class has a charter. It's different for enrichment. It's different for the ELA. It's different for the math. Everybody has a different one. And at the start of each class, they say it. And if there's a mishap or something, we can point to it. We can look at it and say, hey, were we respectful? Did we do what our class charter was supposed to be? So we kind of bind them and make sure that we hold true to those affirmations that they set at the beginning of the year, because that's when it really sticks. And then they have an investment in it because they helped create it.
Peace. So affirmation for us, as you know, we do at the school, we do affirmations in the morning. We do it during our classes. One of the things that I have included in the Rites of Passage class, because I teach and work with all the boys at the school. And with COSBAC, I also work with the boys, the Coalition of Schools Educating Boys of Color. I was working with Rites of Passages. And we had the opening, the calls that the boys would memorize, and actually they did it. So they love to do it. Like they would say, Imhotep, Asaphos, are you ready? All day, every day. A male is born, a man is made. Giving credit to my brother, brother, you know who you are, Brother Raheem. And but all of those things are important, but then also a part of the affirmation for us is the creating of this sacred space in our classrooms, in our spaces. Our classrooms aren't like garbage dumps. It's very important, because what you see when we talk about, and I was listening and I was hearing like a lot of conversation about like toxic education. And when I was with COSBAC, we went off into it was about, I think it was 12 different schools in the Philadelphia school district. They gave us our own space and we worked with the boys there. And some of the things that we saw behind some of the schools, in terms of language, how do you communicate, like the things it was things that were not really in our locus of control. So how do we help center our young men and have them go off in these toxic environments and continue to operate knowing that the end goal is to get your grade and to do what it is you need to do. So what we did was we created a sacred space. When you walk into my classroom, I have an area that's very beautiful, and we talk about libations, and I asked them to bring, the boys actually bring in obituaries. So my obituary, my mom and dad is there. They have, people bring obituaries of their family members, some of their brothers and sisters, some of their cousins and different people in their families that were might not be here for whatever reason. And that helps kind of guide the young people, because we think about it. And this is also why libation is important, because when we reflect on the people who have lived before us, we know that we're not here by accident. We're here as a result of someone else, sacrificing. And so you would want to make those people proud, especially if they're your personal ancestors, if they're your grandmothers, and a lot of times I think it may sound kind of cheesy, but I think they forget, or I think they look for an outlet in the schools of joking or laughter, because at home it's too heavy. So when they come into the school, we have to bring that reality back. And so a part of bringing that reality back is creating a space that they have no choice but to respect. And so they're not going to, throw paper on my floor. Like, that's the first thing. You're not going to leave my classroom if it's a mess. My classroom smells clean and it looks clean. And I got deodorant for the boys if they need that, because of the athletes. I saw someone on Facebook talk about, ask a question: how do you help balance the boys who are heavy in athletics but not as heavy in their scholarship? Well, we talk about the balance, because my eye is balanced. So they have to be able to understand that you have to be a athletic scholar, and scholarship goes hand in hand with athletics. There's not one without the other. They balance each other out. And so when they come into the space, that's another, I think that's another aspect that teachers need to understand. Because if you walk into and that's one of my biggest things, and I don't want to talk too much, but when you walk into a classroom and you see a space that's not well put together, if the teacher doesn't take the time to really, like, not even just what's on the walls, but just in terms of neatliness, if your trash can is, like, at the end of the day, it's going to be overflowing, to get a bigger trash can. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, why would you have children that you love and care for walk past a trash can that's overflowing with stuff? And why would you let them eat in the classroom if that's not allowed? And so many times I think a lot of educators are, I don't know if they're scared of our children, but once you show that you love them, then you can set your bar in terms of what you expect from them, and they will do it. But a lot of times people are afraid to confront, and I'm seeing this in many schools with different educators, because they don't really care the same way. And so they can't confront the same way because they don't care. So that was just some of the things that was going through my mind as people were talking. But definitely creating a sacred space along with the mantra will help set a tone that is that demands some respect in your spaces.
Okay, that was amazing. And I just want to say that I thank each and every one of you for coming in, for engaging, being a part of the panel, and giving your expertise, your advice, your experience. Just thank you all so much. We want to ensure that we, as far as affirmations, if since we're at home right now, we're talking to the parents. Create an affirmation for your family, something that you all can do each day, and be consistent with that. Set your intentions for the day. Maybe write them down somewhere where your child can see them, and hold them accountable for those. And don't come back at them when they hold you accountable for for something that you've done. Take it and stand on it, and that would be modeling that behavior for them, also holding themselves accountable for their own actions. We also want to remember that touching is helpful. Just as Dr. Wood said, babies, we start that at babies with skin to skin contact. For those of us that have birthed babies, they give the mother the baby as soon as they're born. So that skin to skin, it helps to regulate their body temperature. It helps to regulate their heart, their heartbeat, their rhythm. And then once they start getting older, becoming toddlers, and it helps to regulate those emotions when they can't explain themselves. So that touch is so very important. It doesn't stop in pre-K, or it doesn't stop in elementary. Continue that touch as long as you can into middle school and high school safely, and in a way that you can. The world is strange right now, so but we want to protect ourselves, but still at the same time we want to comfort our babies. And we want to, even if we have to observe the situation, if we feel like maybe they may not be in a good headspace, we want to observe that situation and take those baby steps that they need to be taken. As Educator Blake says, if they need to take those baby steps that day, then take those steps with them and let them know that it's okay, but still holding their emotions and their reactions accountable. And then as far as the student athletes, and I say student athletes, that comes very natural because that's what it is. And that's how they should be addressed, not just as an athlete, and if they are athletes, not just as students, but recognize what their passion is. If their passion is in sports, then address them as a student athlete. They are students first, and they are athletes as well. So we want to address them as such. Okay, so we are going to go through the panel, and just like last time, this one is telling me it's time to shut it down. So, so I just want each of you all to just go through, give us your social media handles, where you can be contacted, and if you have a program or organization in your community, go ahead and let us know, let our viewers know how you can be reached, how they can reach out to you and become a part of your program, whether they want to enroll their child or they want to volunteer or whatever that may be. So we'll start with Educator Jacobs. Your sound, we can't hear you. Okay.
You can reach me at Mr._Jacobs with a K. Send me a message. I'd love to talk to you. Yeah, just reach out.
Next, Educator Blake. We can't hear you. We can't hear you.
I'm like, yeah, you can reach me. Shirley, Educator Shirley, tell you, I go to bed at 9:30. Shelly Blake, it's very simple. That's my Facebook, Shelly Blake.
I'm Robin Calhoun, and my Facebook is Robin Elzia Calhoun, and that's ELZIA. And my email address is RLELZIA@yahoo.com.
Dr. Woods.
I'm signaling for everybody and then still turned around and did the same thing. So I'm simply Hyacinth Wood on Facebook. Best email for me is hnwood123@gmail.com. And I'm looking forward. I'm thinking of some stuff with Baba Ira that we may need to do to put things in place to balance the boys with the girls, because our daughters out there are having a whole lot of misrepresentation. And so, try to figure out that balance. So, and LinkedIn is also Hyacinth Wood.
All right, Mr. Ira, Educator Ira, sorry.
All right. So you can reach me at malidelphia.com. So I do West African drum, dance, music, and culture. So if you're interested in any of those at your school or for occasions, different occasions, you can reach me at Malidelphia, like Mali, West Africa. And then also on Facebook, Ira Bond. You can just check out some of the other things that I'm doing there, or on Instagram is Ira Bond as well.
And Mr. Harris.
Yes, you can reach me on all social media platforms under Brian Keith Harris, or you can do www.briankeithharris.com, and it'll give you information about Sons of Freedom Dance Institute, about my book, Freedom's Design, 20 Days of Empowering Black Kings. If you're interested in using the book as a curriculum, as a way to teach our young men about their history and culture, you can hit me up on either social media or via the website, and we will make sure that you and those young men have that book so that they can feel proud about who they are and for where they've come.
Yes, we definitely want our young men and our young ladies to feel proud. So those of you on here that do have those programs, don't be afraid to do something virtual. They're out there. They'll reach you. You reach them, definitely. And we are here to support each and every one of you in your respective ways. I just want to remind you all that we are NeuroAdvanced Academics. You can reach us on Instagram and Facebook at NeuroAdvanced Academics, NeuroA Academics on Instagram, And also to mention that my husband owns a youth football league with American Youth Football. And so feel free to check out our Facebook page at Legendary Black Lions. You can Google us as well, Legendary Black Lions. We are with American Youth Football. So, and I will close out with that. We are Neuro Advanced Academics. Thank you all for viewing, spending this time with us. I hope you enjoyed. Good night.
And thank you to our panelists again. You guys were awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, have a good one.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Take care.
Yes,
Thank you for the invite, Shirley.
Yes.